President Trump's 2005 tax returns were supposedly leaked and dropped in the mailbox of David K. Johnson, a former reporter of the New York Times. There were only 2 pages that were leaked in that way, allegedly. According to the tax returns, he earned $150 million and paid $30 million in federal taxes in 2005. Also, the Congressional Budget Office issued a report that said 24 million more people will be uninsured by 2026 if the GOP American Health Care Act is passed. We have those 2 issues to talk about. Please welcome BMCC professor and political commentator, J.C. Polanco. Nice to have you back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Do you get enough of this? You're
I
ready,
love BronxNet. Love it.
So let's talk about the tax returns. I'll start this way. The president should simply release his tax returns, shouldn't he?
I'm an attorney. I tell all my clients, tell me everything I have to know. And throughout the year, I was here with you guys, and I said the president should just disclose his tax information like every other candidate has in the past, because they're eventually going to be leaked. Somehow we're going to get it, and it's going to be news. Sadly, for the reporters, this is too much of a thud. This is nothing. I mean, the fact that he earned what he earned and paid the percentage of the taxes that he paid isn't sensational. What's sensational is that you finally got a copy of it. And he should just release these things, because then there's no news. And instead of talking about healthcare, instead of talking about who he's going to replace Pre-Bahara with, we're going to be talking about this for the next week easily.
Why don't more Republicans get behind that effort? I mean, are they simply like, you know what, even though we don't necessarily like what we see, we don't want to bother him because we want to kind of get something out of him?
Well, you have to understand that when we talk about parties, I know that there's the intrinsic factor of doing what's right in our hearts, but at the end of the day, parties have to unite, coalesce, and support their president. And in this case, President Trump has said repeatedly that he's not going to disclose his taxes because of some audit that's out there.
Well, the audit's, that's all done, right, at this point?
At this point, I'm telling you, he should have disclosed a long time ago. But the party as a unit, just like the Democrats would have done with President Obama, the party as a unit is going to coalesce and support President Trump's position of not disclosing his tax information. Now, that may be a problem for you, maybe a problem for me, but for Americans who voted for him, they didn't see it as a problem. He did get over 300 electoral votes. So in his defense, he comes out and says, I won the election. Voters don't care. The only people that care is Gary Axelbank and J.C. Polanco. They want to see them, to be honest with you.
He did say that the media is the only ones who care, but don't you think Americans, especially with the questions over dealings with Russia, let's just say, and has been suggested even as a result of what they saw yesterday, let's say he has property that was negotiated with Russia, that maybe the Trump organization has benefited from. Shouldn't he at least show what those numbers are like, especially to identify whether or not he might have a motive in working more closely with the Russians over the rules and guidelines of American diplomacy?
Gary, I think it's important for any president and any presidential candidate to provide as much information as humanly possible for us to know where they're invested in. I believe in it. I believe in the system, and I agree with you. But the reality is that when it comes to President Donald Trump, the people that matter didn't care any less at all about the disclosure.
You think even to this day that with all the questions about Russia?
I don't. I think he doesn't lose one electoral vote over this. I know that I'm concerned. I know that people like Senator Lindsey Graham are concerned. Senator John McCain is concerned. You have people that are concerned about what are his relationships with Russia. Could we see your taxes?
A lot of Americans are concerned.
I think so, but you know what? Hillary Clinton won the popular vote with 3 million votes. So when you tell me that there are a lot of Americans that are concerned, I agree, Gary, there are. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there are enough that matter for us to see any changes in the Electoral College map. I think that what's happening right now with his taxes only benefit Donald Trump, because what he's doing is he's villainizing the press, and his supporters agree with him that the press is coming after him for no reason. Look, Gary, they see the numbers. They see $38 million paid in taxes. They see 150 million. I know, but they see it and they say to themselves, so how much do you want him to pay? Look, The Pope won't pay another penny more than he has to.
I mean, we don't have to go further with this because I do want to talk about health care. But the suggestion is out there that maybe the White House or Trump or some people in his organization leaked those tax returns because they were favorable compared to everything else.
But can I tell you, that would be very smart, and I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, I mean,
I'd advise him to do it. That's a good idea.
Slippery as a snake. I mean, he put it out there, and he baited the perfect one, Rachel Maddow, because he knew how she would react, and he came out smelling like a rose last night.
Yeah, he did.
Let's talk about health care. Vice President Pence said that the new American Health Care Act will end the Obamacare nightmare. President Trump says it's been a disaster. Do you believe Obamacare has been a disaster and a nightmare?
That's a good question. I think in some ways it has been. I'll tell you this. In Arizona, premiums have gone up by 166%. That's a nightmare. When you go to Alaska and you see the premiums they're paying up there, that's a nightmare. Because when you talk about insurance, you have to understand that we're not just talking about one policy, is it a nightmare? We're talking about there are people that this is going to be a nightmare for. Obviously, when you look at the map, 25 million people have benefited from Obamacare. So obviously for them, this has been a dream come true. People with pre-existing conditions, those that are up to age 26. These are all of the people that have benefited tremendously from having access to health care. But at the same time, you're looking at millions of people that have lost health care and can no longer afford those premiums and may have a card that says they have insurance but can't afford the deductibles. So there's a real problem here, and it's complicated. And I think that former Speaker John Boehner, Gary, was right. I think what's going to end up happening is that we're going to fix the mistakes with Obamacare. I don't know how this plan passes the Senate. The Senate has come out hard against it. You have conservatives that are against it. So I don't think the votes are there in the Congress for this. I think you may be able to fix the problems with Obamacare.
You're not going to want to hear this. So Hillary Clinton was right, because what she said at the debate, at one of the debates, I think the debate that was about domestic issues, was that Obamacare is not perfect. We need to fix what's wrong and improve it. And then, of course, Donald Trump said, no, it's a disaster and it needs to be repealed, and that's the first thing I'm going to do. So what you're suggesting, and what, frankly, many Republicans are suggesting, is that they are, that they're correct.
I think Speaker John Boehner's right. I think he says, look, we have problems with it. We have to fix it. We cannot have the government-controlled focus. But the reality is this, Gary. You cannot have pre-existing conditions covered. You cannot have people up to the age 26 covered and expect that to happen without some kind of individual mandate. And I think that when Governor John Kasich of Ohio says that the $3,000 incentive that you get in your tax deduction under the new plan cannot buy you any real medical health plan, I think he's right. I don't think $3,000 is enough in a tax incentive. So there's going to have to be, Gary, there's going to be a give and take where they're going to fix the mistakes, including some of these overbearing mandates on states that can't afford the expansion on Medicaid.
Listen, you're a family man like I am, and I'm going to give you a personal story. So my daughter graduated college. She was, 22, 23 years old. Because of Obamacare, I was still able to umbrella her under my company health plan. Then she turned 26. She, at that time, started to get her career and her life in focus. So she was able to take care of herself. She went and got into a health plan through the exchange in New York State, is paying $350 a month right now, has health care. Maybe it's not the greatest coverage, but without that system, she would be one of those potential 24 million people without health care. I don't see the nightmare, and I don't see that it's a disaster. I see that my daughter was covered till the age of 26, and then when she was able to get on, listen, $350 a month is not nothing, but she has a job and she has health care.
Gary,
I'm having a hard time.
Gary, I understand, and for a lot of people for a lot of people that I know, I told you this is a dream, but there are a lot of people that this is a nightmare. I just mentioned Arizona. Can you imagine the $350 increases by 166% under Obamacare? Your daughter couldn't afford that insurance under that circumstance.
So under the American Health Care Act that is proposed, they would then take, and many Republicans have even said it, they would take people over 60 and they say they wouldn't be able to afford it because basically they're making the older people pay since they use more instead of younger people. You're gonna, you know what I mean? It's almost like somebody's got to pay somewhere.
Look, that's one of the main reasons that the votes don't exist today because of what you just mentioned.
Right.
But remember that one of the counterpoints to that is Medicare will eventually kick in. The question is what happens in that window between the person that doesn't have Medicare, when it
that's
kicks in,
58 years old. And,
it's,
and
look, this, I think the bill as you see it today is dead on arrival unless there's a lot of fixing going on.
You know, JC, I want to. We're Bronx guys, Bronx boys, born and bred, and when I look at our emergency rooms, and I don't want to ask if you've ever been in an emergency room, whether it be at Montefiore, at Lincoln, or
North
Jacoby,
Central.
or North Central, wherever it is, if you take 1.4 million people off of their health care plans, you're going to load up Bronx emergency rooms like we have never seen. Number one, it makes people unhealthier. Number two, if you're talking about costs, you and me and everybody around us and everybody watching is going to pay the bill for that, and that was one of the original plans. I'm having a hard time with 24 million people potentially losing their health care.
Me too. I think it's going to be an impossibility. I don't think that's going to happen, Gary. You hear it here first. It's not going to happen. No, Gary, no, there's a reason for this. It's not going to happen because at the end of the day, there is something conservative, there's something Republican about telling people that if they can pay something for insurance, they should. And that's why in 1994, the Heritage Foundation supported this plan, because it was very much an individual tailored idea that if Gary could put $20 in the pocket, in the bucket, he should put $20 in the bucket, because why should Polanco put 40? Because he got sick.
Or
idea,
because he's making a heck of a lot more money than I am.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
JC Polanco, great to have you
Thanks
with
for
us.
having me.
The dialogue is always interesting and sometimes controversial. Maybe less so this time.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time around.
Thank you so much,
very
Gary.
much.
Have a great
We'll
day.
be right back with more Open right after these messages.